Good morning, children. Today we will continue with the remaining part of the lesson. And before we go further, I would like to show you some images. You have heard of Jatin the hawker. So, what did Jatin bring actually in his basket for the children? So, I will show you some of those pictures of the goodies that Jatin brought in his basket to sell in the village. And Jatin was not paid with money, but he was paid in kind. They gave him either grain like rice or wheat for his goods, what he had brought. Instead of money for his goods, he would be paid either in grain or in some other way what he needed most. So you see, girls, in this picture you can see batasha. It's some sort of sweet dish, a Bengali sweet dish. And then you can see that Ramdana laddu, what they spoke about. It's made of some til, Ramdana laddu. And then you see save. I think you all know what this is. It's made sometimes sweet and sour, save. And you can see the imarti or the jalebi, the commonly called here as jalebi. It's also known as imarti, red and shiny. When Fandan seen this, his mouth watered, he said. And this is the imarti that we are talking about here. Now, girls, we'll carry on. When Jatin had left his house, he passed the garden. He left the garden behind, and he was way into that field and onto the main road. And what did he see there? Carts lining up. Bullock carts were lined up, and you see a few ekkas. They said ekkas are small horse-drawn vehicles. So some bicycles and ekkas, horse-drawn vehicles, also passed by. And he even seen a camel. But his one desire was not over all these sights, but what was starring in his mind was about Jatin, when Jatin the hawker would arrive. Well, girls, now open your textbook and we can continue with the lesson. So, Fandan had made it to the main road, and his one desire was to bring Jatin to the village. He wanted to be the first one who would lead Jatin into the village with his basket of goodies. Now we'll continue. Slowly the shadows lengthened. He was still hoping that Jatin would show up. Hope was driving the time along. Disheartened, he squatted on the road. Tears fell unfettered at the dashed hopes. He sobbed uncontrollably. How cruel Jatin was. He comes to meet us every day, but the day I come to meet him, he doesn't show up. I won't let him enter the village tomorrow. I won't let him enter the village tomorrow. His heart constricted with such childish thoughts. Suddenly, his eyes fell on a broken jabba, a cane basket on the ground. Despite the gloom of dejection and failure, this was enough to rouse the child. Such is the carefree heart at this age. He lined the basket with some leaves. He picked up some gravel and stones and placed them in the basket. Then he took off his shirt and covered it all. He placed the basket on his head and started walking towards the village. No longer was he the boy who was looking out for Jatin. He was Jatin, the same manna from heaven on his head. He called out in the same way. His gait was the same, and so was his diction. Would he have felt as happy leading Jatin to the village as he felt in this moment when he himself was Jatin? He was flying, believing the mirage real, the false true. Happiness devoid of reason, he danced rather than walked, his head held high in pride. His innocent face reflected the truth of his belief with such intensity that nobody dared laugh at him. Such was his demeanor when he walked into the village. The boys heard his call, and ran towards him. Just like Jatin, Fandan was surrounded by eager faces. Somebody asked, "What kind of a game is this?" But one heart understood another. Sweets started selling. Pebbles became money and stones, and rocks became sweets. This game was much more fun. Rationality lacks romance, pleasure, and the feeling of weightlessness. Munu handed him a pebble, saying, "Jatin, I'll give you an anna for the sweets." Jatin placed a few stones on a leaf and gave it to him. Sweets never tasted as good or as delicious. So, here is the end of the lesson, girls, and let's see what has been spoken about in these paragraphs that I've just read. In himself, he thought he was Jatin now. With his basket on the head, he pretended to be like Jatin, and he walked very happily. And they say his innocent face reflected the truth of his belief with such intensity. He believed that he was Jatin, and he walked, and nobody dared to ask him anything or question him or laugh at him. And such was his demeanor when he walked into that village. What is the meaning of demeanor, girls? It is the way in which someone behaves. Now, the boys heard him, and then they ran towards him. And just like Jatin, Fandan too was surrounded by all the eager little children's faces. Everyone came around him, and they asked him, "What kind of a game is this?" But then they understood that this was a game, and Jatin and Fandan was acting like Jatin. And so they also joined in the fun. And then they started selling sweets. What were the sweets here? It was nothing but stones and pebbles and rocks. The rocks became sweets, the stones and pebbles became money. And then one boy came up and said, "I'll give you an anna for the sweets." Those days, an anna was equal to a rupee like. And so he said, "I'll give you an anna for the sweets," and he gave him a pebble. And like that, this was a new game started in the village. So that's why the lesson is named the game. Jatin placed a few stones on a leaf and gave it to the little boy who gave him an anna, that is Munnu. And then they say that the sweets never tasted as good or as delicious. Were they real sweets? No, it was the pebbles and rocks. The rocks became sweets, and they pretended that these were real sweets that tasted delicious. So, this is how this little boy turned his disappointing situation into a happy one. And that's how we too should learn to turn our disappointment into happy situations, girls. So, that brings us to the end of the lesson. You carry on by reading the lesson again, and then you try and answer the reading comprehension, girls, here. I'm sure you'll be able to do that on your own. We will send you the notes for this lesson, and at the back you have reference to context, girls. That is the extracts. Please read, try to do it on your own. And when you get the notes, you can check and see how far you have done well. You can just write the notes in your rough book till you get the actual notes. Okay, girls, we'll end here, and please read the lesson again. Well, girls, that's all for today. Have a great day, girls. Thank you.